Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Tuesday morning. Well, your Utah Jazz won. They beat the Chicago Bulls 80-63 in the Las Vegas Summer League. And if you think that's a low-scoring game, you're right. That's a very low-scoring game. Utah 12, Chicago 10 in the third quarter. If you're looking for the lowest of the low-scoring quarters, that would be it. There were no high-scoring quarters. And the Jazz did that without Ace Bailey playing, without Darren Peterson playing, without Cody Williams playing. So it really doesn't matter. I don't know how else to say it, but just the guys who did that aren't going to be on the team. Maybe a couple of them get two-way contracts, but we're not going to see those guys. Now, there is a parallel quote out there that does bring this issue front and center. Keontae George saying the quality of the Jazz defense will shock people. Do you believe it? It's up on our Facebook page. If Keontae is implying that the Jazz are going to play high-quality defense, and he says it will shock people, do you believe that? I do believe that high-quality Jazz defense will shock people. Is that the question? I believe it will absolutely shock people. The Jazz defense has been, just add one letter to shock. It has been schlock. It has been terrible. They have been in the bottom five in the league, depending on which category, which numbers you want to use. You can make the argument that they are the worst defense in the league. Now, that all comes with a big asterisk, as Tim Lacombe, the coach, 10-2 here on the Zone, is fond of saying and told me many times, hey, the boss made the meeting optional. If it's optional, people aren't coming. And the Jazz made defense optional, and people weren't defending. That's Tim's point. And really, you can't argue with him. They were not defending, and it was optional. They were tanking games, and everybody knew it. Now, the question is, when a much higher quality of defense is expected, when there's got to be a lot more focus, when there's got to be a lot more effort, what are the odds that the Jazz can provide that they can perform at that level over a long period of time? TBD. Now, Keontae thinks it's going to happen, and we're going to be shocked. I'll tell you right now, I would be impressed if they can turn the 30th best defense into the 15th. If they could get right to the middle, I'd be impressed, and I think that would make them a lot better. Now, if they had Kessler, and I realize that's not happening, but if they did, my expectation was that they would be top third, maybe top quarter. And there are people talking about top five. That seems like a big ask. I'm open to it, but I wasn't expecting it. But I thought they had to get top third and could possibly get top quarter. They were going to have so much size, and they were going to have a legit shot-blocking center. Now, this team's going to be really different because obviously they don't have Kessler. He's in L.A. He's talking about how he'll run through a wall for the Lakers. Yeah, for that kind of money, you ought to. This is more, I assume Nurkic is going to play a lot. He's going to be more of an offensive presence. They still have a former defensive player of the year, and they still have pretty good size. But it is not as long, it's not as athletic a team, and it's not going to be as imposing. And maybe they can still get top third in the league. And if they do, then that is a quality defense. And yes, it would shock people. And Keontae thinks it's going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen, but I do believe it would shock people if it happened. I absolutely think it would shock people. People would be pleasantly surprised. They would be pleasantly shocked. It's easy to say that now, and, optimism abounds at this time of year, so that's great. We'll see when we get there. We'll see. And then the perimeter guys have to do a much better job of getting in front of people. The people who can provide defense, the people I'd be intrigued about defending, Cody Williams can, but he provides so little else. I'm just not convinced he's going to be able to get on the floor. Darren Peterson can, for sure. Ace Bailey can. Keontae, you're kind of the weak link. If you can do it, and I look at Keontae and I look at Markkanen. Those are the two guys because Jaren Jackson Jr. has done it. I don't think Nurkic can. Bailey and Peterson should be able to do it. So back to Keontae and Markkanen. There you go. That's where the question lies. And then the other people they plug in have to be good. And I think that's where Konchar and Svi have the upper hand as far as fighting their way into the rotation because They're veterans. They have defended. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a little better whistle. So, excuse me, I think that, they've got a fighting chance based on defense. In fact, I don't think they need the ball to help the team because obviously these other guys are very skilled offensively and are going to need shots. So, all right, we'll talk more about this as the morning goes along. We'll take a break. When we come back, Real Salt Lake is back in action tomorrow night, and we will hear from the head coach, Pablo Mastroeni, with PK and I next. Stay with us.
Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer at a beverage manufacturing plant, he starts his day knowing every line is ready to run because Grainger delivers the industrial-grade products he needs to keep mixers, conveyors, and packaging equipment moving. With Grainger's vast selection of bearings, belts, and motors, he keeps operations running smoothly, so nothing grinds to a halt. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Pablo Mastroeni joined us on Friday to look ahead to Real Salt Lake's game tomorrow night. They're going to be back in action Wednesday night against Burnley. The game will not be on the air here on the Zone. And there will be no stream. I think there have been some tweaks, and Pablo's actually going to talk about them, but they don't want those on tape. So, if you want to see it, you need to be at the game. Here's Pablo with PK and I on the Zone. Pablo, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Pablo, before we get to your team, it has been a World Cup break here, and I know you played in the World Cup, and you're emotionally invested in the team, and that had to be a big old kick in the teeth. Not just that they lost. I mean, they were always going to lose at some point, but they didn't go out battling the way Mexico did. They didn't go out scrapping and fighting the way Egypt did. Those two lost with dignity, and they entertained us while they lost. And sometimes when you battle like that, you're like Switzerland, and you get the penalties, and you win and you advance. Instead, they got drilled. And I'm thinking that everyone's worried about the third goal, which was a whole horrendous goalkeeping mistake. But when that first goal drops between three U.S. players, the ball drops and no one reacts, and one other guy steps up and crosses it in front and it's a tap-in, I'm thinking you lost your mind because I've heard you talk about goals like that, and they kill you.
Yeah. I think that first goal kind of encapsulates the way the whole game went, which was on both sides of the ball, we were like one step behind, and again, I think there's moments in games that kind of highlight where your mentality is, right? And you saw three guys not going for the ball on that one play, but you had one Belgian guy that was daring and brave enough to step through. And it kind of like that moment, I think that player for Belgium really set the tone from a mentality perspective as to how we're going to be on the front foot. And the three U.S. players kind of looking up in the air and thinking the other guy was going to do it kind of is metaphorically saying, I'm not going to take responsibility for this. You do it, you do it, you do it. And I think that was kind of the disappointing part of the game, and I think the other part too is, and we talked about this a little bit, all three host countries, they got great draws as far as their group play. And to be fair, the one game where U.S. was going to always be tested was going to be Turkey. And then they played a different group. And so there wasn't a whole lot to extrapolate from the group play as to when they encounter a really good team, right? And then Bosnia, obviously a team that squeaked into the World Cup. That was a good draw for the U.S. as well. And I think all three games that the U.S. won, they played a certain way, and they forced our opponents to play a certain way. When you get to the tougher stages, you're not going to dictate to Argentina, to Brazil, to the big clubs, the big countries. They have a style of play that you have to also be aware of. And so I think we caught Belgium on a day where they were motivated, and obviously the Balogun situation I think added fire to their belief. And they had something bigger to play for. And, I think the U.S. just started the game off in a really kind of doubtful way. And it permeated through the rest of the 90 minutes. And I think that's where you're saying, we kind of fell flat. And so it's a tough way to go out. I think there's a ton of bright spots that, after the emotional pain kind of subsides, there's a lot of really bright spots for the U.S. national team, some individual players, and really the direction that we need to move in to continue to be a really good World Cup team.
So you say you started the game in a doubtful way, and that jumps out to me. So that sounds like if a team does that, it's basically the situation could be where they're beat before they even start. So how do you get that, even if you have to trick yourself that you're not in that doubtful way and you're dealing it from a position of confidence?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the easiest way to do that, I think, is it's not going to be with the ball. It's going to be against the ball, because I think that moment, I think what oftentimes ignites a team is a great defensive tackle, is something that's questionable, where the ref is maybe giving a yellow card to you because you were really, really aggressive. And now it kind of revs the engines up a little bit, like it heightens your senses. And I just felt like too often from a defensive standpoint, we were either, pressing when we shouldn't have been, or we were kind of caught in between players, and it was Belgium, and to be fair, Belgium did a great job where they knew that the U.S. wanted to press. So Belgium would bait them all the way back to their goalkeeper. They'd move their whole lines forward. And then Belgium said, we're not going to fall for this. We're going to go over your back line. And there hadn't been a team in the World Cup that had threatened the back line. And now you see a player like Tim Ream, who, again, had a fantastic World Cup. But when you're up against speedsters that also have great quality and balls in behind, and you're running now back to your goal to defend, it's asking a lot of questions. So I would say how you get back into it is a moment where the fan base gets involved, right? Whether it's a great attacking play, and the guys are throwing their arms up in the air like follow us, or it's a great defensive play where as a group you're saying, this is the moment, this is where we put our flag in the ground. This is it. You're coming to here, and then from there on you're going to get bit. You're going to get, you're going to catch a foot. But there wasn't really a moment of that could change the game at any point. And I think that's why we kind of went along with the momentum that Belgium was playing at.
Okay, so a story, a problem, and then I'll ask you for the answer. The story is a hilarious Brian Dunce's story, which he tells much better than I'm about to. But he talks about how when he was a kid and these youth national setups and that kind of deal, they'd all do the training and watch the film, and it was really hard work and the hardest thing they'd ever been up against, right? And then they'd finally have time to kind of bond as a group and go to the mall or whatever. And they'd be walking out, and there'd be one kind of weird kid in the group who was over there juggling or doing some little drill with cones or whatever. He says, yeah, that weird kid, he grew up to be Landon Donovan and score like 57 goals for the U.S. national team. And Dunny would laugh like, yeah, we all missed the boat. It was the million touches that he got that we didn't, that made him special, and we weren't. And I hear people talk about the U.S. will be good in soccer when they have the best athletes. But I think it's about getting the bazillion touches so you can make the ball do whatever you want. That goal Mbappe scored in the quarterfinal, he couldn't see the goal. The defender was there. He bends the ball around the defender and hits the post, and it goes in. And he knew it. He was celebrating before it happened because he's had those million touches as a kid. We have 30 academies now where anybody can play for free, but mostly it's pay for play. Until we have 300 academies. I know it's a nation of 350 million people, but we're not really scouring 350 million people for 11 soccer players. I mean, right. We're not. So is there another path, or do there have to be? I don't know that there was an academy anywhere near Thunderbird High for you and PK. You somehow made it through, but I mean, doesn't it have to be an academy on the west side of Phoenix, on the east side, and not just one, halfway between Tucson and Phoenix out in the middle of nowhere in Casa Grande?
No, that's actually a great question, and I can actually answer it from a personal perspective, and really interesting. So I had a club coach. His name was Luis Dabo, and he came from. He was born in Guinea-Bissau, played professionally in Portugal, played at a really, really high level. Then he got into coaching in indoor soccer in the MISL. And then he ended up in Arizona coaching youth soccer. And he had a philosophy that was way ahead of its time. And he took a lot of the Portuguese philosophy for developing young players, which is exactly what you're talking about, which is touches. So every day, for the first hour of training, we had a 2-hour training session Monday through Thursday as kids. The first hour was you and your ball. And so it was left foot, right foot. It was trapping. It was kicking the ball up in the air to yourself, bringing it down, trapping, changing your speed. And then we got into passing. And then it was like 2 guys, one ball, creating movements. And you had to do this all within the center circle of a soccer field, right? So it's not the biggest space. And there could be up to like 40 people in there at any one time. And so you're working your passing technique, you're working your dribbling technique for the first hour inside that circle. As kids, it was the most boring, mundane. It was the worst. It was the worst, right? Because we all want to shoot. We all want to play. We don't really want to work on our technique. But he did it. And the amount of kids that would leave the club is incredible. They said, no, we're going to this other club. And they'd go to the other club. But what was amazing, within 1 year, they would always be back. And the whole thing was because our team started to get, we weren't good when we were young, but as we got to 15, we got to 16, we got to 17, we ended up going to the national tournament. And I think we finished second in nationals as an under 17 youth team. And it wasn't because tactically we were astute. As a matter of fact, he never coached tactics. The only thing he'd coach is individual one-on-ones, individual technique. And that made, and I think from our club team, we sent, I think, 12 players to Division I schools across the country. And this is 1994, right? And it didn't matter what position you played, because if you can control the ball, if you understood where to pass the ball, if you understood how to manipulate this thing, the college coach could say, we need a left back, or we need a midfielder, or we need a winger. It didn't matter. We were all capable of doing that. And so I think what you're explaining, what you're talking about, is exactly the philosophy of the youth coach I had. But the problem with that is he didn't care about winning games. And now when people pay to play, they care about winning, right? The parents live vicariously through their kids, and they say they want to be able to go to the barbecue at the weekend and be like, oh, we won 4-0. And it's not like Travis won 4-0. It's we won 4-0, you know? And so I think it's a huge cultural thing, where and now this generation of parents are super involved, where back when I was growing up, my parents would drop me off at soccer and that was it, or I got a ride with someone to soccer, or I went with another family to tournaments. It's not like that anymore. And so the involvement of the parents, I think, is a big issue with that. And the other part too is, if you pay, you want to win. And that's winning at a young age is synonymous with my money's worth it. It's not about developing young players. And then the other part to this, and sorry, this is so long-winded, but the coaching piece is every coach at the youth level wants to be a Premier League coach. So the first thing they're coaching is tactics. How do we beat this under 18? Because they're going to be a swarm of bees in the middle of the field. So how do we align ourselves, along the outside and make them run and then attack the goal? Right? It's not. So my point is that the most important thing is the story about Landon, which is 1 million touches. And the environment and the culture that exists today in soccer in America doesn't provide 1 million touches. And so unless you're going to be the odd guy that's out there juggling on your own when everyone else is going to the mall, it's going to be very hard to get to that level. And so, but I think, so I don't know what the answer is, DJ, but I hear you. I lived it. And it was one of the reasons why I was able to move on in my career, because I played 1 million different positions. But one thing I always had was a good control of the ball and a good understanding of how to manipulate it.
Well, that was deep, Pablo. So here I come. Do you think the U.S. coach looked like Russell Crowe, like I did?
Yeah. I thought so too. That's what we call him, the Argentinian Russell Crowe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was calling him. And he wore the same costume every game, which was pretty. He played the part every game.
I did tell my wife at one point, he looks like a high school art teacher. He looks like he should. Ceramics on Tuesday, kids.
And then he turned into Russell Crowe when he kicked the water bottles. That was the action part.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, the World Cup will go on without the United States here. It'll be over soon, and Major League Soccer will be back at it. You've got a game Wednesday with Burnley, a little tune-up game here to get you going. And I think that the challenge in front of you, and you know this well, I won't recount all the numbers. Last year, after the League's Cup break, the team had been playing really well, and then they lost 5 out of 6. And I won't recount all the numbers going back, but that's not the first summer that's happened where you are flying spring, early summer, you have a break, and you never recapture the magic. So I know you know all those numbers, and you probably know them better than I do, and I'm sure you're trying something different this year so the team keeps playing the way it was because, again, you were having a really good run. What are you doing so this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, from I think we have a good snapshot of the first third of the season where we were able to now go, these are the things that we're doing well. These are the areas we struggled in, and we talked about it. Set pieces has been an area. We revamped our defensive set piece setup. So that's been, and we put it on display at this a couple days ago in Minnesota, which was really good. The other part is one of the areas is how do we manage games? Not just, again, with leads, without leads, when it's 0-0, is like how do we manage games and create control? Where I thought a lot of the good games we played, we had a lot of great control, but then when we had the lead, it felt like we were just ceding a lot of territory and really relying on Hoffa to be the guy that solved the problems closer to our goal, which was great when it worked, but when it didn't, we gave our opponents a lot of territory. And so, again, that was something that we saw from the last month of work here in Minnesota, which was really good. And I think those two things are really the biggest things. We've conceded close to 40% of our goals from set pieces, right? So that obviously, if the numbers are, if we didn't concede any set piece goal in the first part, we'd be 6 points ahead in the table, in the league, right? So that's an area that if we don't address, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So, and then the control piece and continuing to think about how we can be a more fluid attacking team, continue to create great opportunities. And again, we just went to Minnesota. We put 4 in the back of the net in we played 3 45-minute periods. So that part's good. So there's a lot of things that are the work is kind of showing through. But I think this Burnley game will be a great test for us. Obviously, a team that's has been playing at a much higher level. Obviously, different players probably from the time they're in the Prem, but it'll be a great challenge for us and a game where we can continue to fine tune the different areas of the game that we're working on.
During this past few weeks and so forth, what was required of the guys in terms of a schedule?
Yeah, to be fair, the guys have been all in when, we gave them 3 weeks off, and then we were in, 5 days a week and usually gave the guys 2 days off. But again, I think it was just being really deliberate of like, do we want to be a top team in this league? And if it is, then there's no substitute for working hard and being deliberate about the work that you're doing. And the guys have been all in, and we've made the sessions to where it's not the tactics are actually a part of the exercise. It's kind of built in, and then we've been doing video sessions to recap, and the guys have been all in. And the one thing I would say, PK, is you never know how guys are going to come back from break, but they were all fit, they were all hungry. And again, for me, the proof is always in the game. You can talk about the environment and training and all these things, but are you seeing the things that you want in the game? Are they playing with excitement? Are they playing hard for each other? And those things were on full display a couple days ago. So I think it's been a great reset for us to identify those areas. But more importantly, the guys have just taken it on. And like I always talk about, great teams are led by the players and they're guided by the coaches. And that's what it feels like at the moment.
Burnley was in the English Premier League. They got relegated, so now they'll be in the championship here this coming season. And I've heard Garth Lagerwey has gotten involved with that club, former Real Salt Lake general manager back when they won the Cup in 2009. Have you talked much with Garth? Was he part of putting this together? What's his role with Burnley? Can you answer any of those questions, Pablo?
All I can answer is I think you're right about the Garth Lagerwey being involved. I know Jason Kreis was, instrumental in making this game happen. And he's got a really good relationship with Garth. So that would be a great question for Jason as to the details of how all that happened.
Yeah.
All right, here's my contribution. I'm going to read you some song lyrics.
Uh-oh.
Hey, all you Chiefs, come on and fight. We've got the team with all the might. We've got the score. We'll get some more. We'll get the victory in our sight. Hey, all you Chiefs, we are the best in all the north, south, east, and west. We are the team that runs with speed and fame, and that's why Thunderbird will win this game. That's our fight song.
The crazy thing is, I remember parts of that. That's crazy.
So
I remember.
Since you went to Thunderbird High School and PK went to Thunderbird High School and I didn't, I just have to time travel to, well, you went in different decades. I have to time travel to the different decades you were there. Basically, should I just picture myself in Minnesota listening to those fans sing Wonderwall? Was it pretty much the same thing, Pablo?
It wasn't the same thing. It was much more. It's hard to explain, DJ. One of these days, the three of us should all meet back at Thunderbird High, and there's a little mountain at the top with a big T. You know how they do those. You know, they paint the mountain.
Right over by the tennis courts.
Is that like the hill they climb at ASU football games to watch for free?
Yeah, we have
same
a
deal
right there.
Do people climb those to watch Thunderbird games for free? Is it the same deal?
They can actually walk into the little stadium.
Yeah, I was going to say there wasn't that much of a demand for tickets.
All right, Pablo.
But the baseball field was right along Thunderbird Road, and so when we were out there many times, usually just in practice because there were no fans, you'd get kids from other schools that would drive by, particularly if they're going west, so the passengers are there. You suck. You're awful. Well, we used to get that all the time.
That's good stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for the lyrics, PK. I'm now looking at Google Maps, and I can see the road that zigs right around the baseball field. PK's told me all about
Thunderbird.
it. Yeah, Thunderbird High.
Yeah.
All right, those are the days. All right, Pablo, Wednesday night, Real Salt Lake back at it at home against Burnley, and then give it another week, and you'll be off and running. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Always fun.
There's Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, RSL, and Burnley from the English Championship, just relegated out of the Premier League. Tomorrow night, 7:30 at America First Field. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports, joins us next. Stay with us. DJ, PK, and we're joined by Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSL Sports. Mitch, good morning. Welcome back from Big 12 Media Days.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Happy to be on with you today.
Mitch, when does BYU do it? When do they just follow in Jarrah Jones' footsteps and build their own Ford Center, their own 12,000, 10,000-seat dome? All the high school games in there, Lone Peak on Thursday, Timpview on Friday, a Saturday triple header. That's the way they do it in Texas. When does it happen?
It's a great idea. BYU, that's one thing that I've been kind of surprised with BYU is that they've never had their own, football command center similar to what Utah has. They always had that student athlete building for the practice side and football ops, but they kind of need a football operations center, and having their own indoor football facility would be probably great because then you could add revenue, but that seems like something that would probably be on the back page for BYU, especially with facilities now in college sports. It seems like it's all about just finding as much revenue to add it to the rosters.
What's the update on Parker Kingston?
Parker Kingston, nothing's really changed. When that case got dismissed and now he's, a free man, innocent, reached out to BYU for a comment on that, and they had no comment at all. They didn't even decline comment. They just didn't respond. So nothing's really changed on that front, with Parker Kingston. I'd be surprised if, he was at BYU playing football, but no new information on that situation. I think what makes it challenging too is that if he was to ever be back at BYU, that case could be refiled. And I know that the state has said that it would be refiled. And I remember talking to legal analysts with KSL, Greg Scortis. They believe that, it was going to be refiled quickly, and it hasn't been refiled yet. But, if there was a situation where he's on the team and then it gets refiled, that would be kind of a difficult situation there for BYU. So nothing's really changed on that front. And so right now he's still no longer part of the university, no longer a student, no longer part of the football team.
He would face honor code sanctions. There had been references to Retzlaff's situation, and we know he had a suspension and chose not to take it and goes to Tulane and plays immediately. It seems like with the threat of possible refiling, that potentially prevents him from playing for anywhere then, right?
Yeah, it would feel like that. And also, too, the ghost transfer rules now with the NCAA that basically kind of got created after the Retzlaff situation. And look, any NCAA rule could obviously get an injunction, get thrown in court, and probably get thrown out. But if a school adds someone outside the portal window because he never entered the portal during the portal window in January, that school could face the head coach being suspended up to 6 games and get a multi-million-dollar fine from the NCAA by adding players outside of the portal window as ghost transfers. And an addition like Kingston, who really good football player last year, that would garner headlines. And then you add in the fact that what he was facing off the field as to what would cause that. I'd be pretty surprised. And again, that refiling element is tricky. And what's difficult too for him, because again, he's an innocent man here on all of this right now, with it being dismissed. This is his 5th year, so the 5-5 potentially wouldn't apply to him because he already used a redshirt year in 2022, and then this would be his 5th year that would then expire his eligibility. So, very, very difficult situation all around.
There's been a lot of talk about what the BYU receiver group looks like now. What does it look like to you right now?
They're going to have to rely on those freshmen to come in and perform at a high level. And, the expectation is that wide receiver 1 is going to be JoJo Phillips going in, but I think that's something that could be a moving target in the season. Someone else could emerge, and maybe it's Kyler Casper, the Oregon transfer, but the wild card in this unit is the freshman, and particularly Legend Glasgow, who will probably take on that Parker Kingston role this year. And he emerged in spring ball as someone that was already trending towards being a starter, and it wouldn't shock me at all if he's starting this season and they expect big things from him. Even Bear Bachmeier at Big 12 Media Day noted that Legend already knows the playbook inside and out, and that's one of the reasons he was getting a lot of first-team snaps in spring ball. So Legend Glasgow, and then, I think the one that really could be interesting is Jaron Pula, the heralded freshman from Lone Peak High School, was once a UCLA commit, then he flipped to Utah, then to BYU. Kind of a long, windy road in the recruiting trail. Those 2 guys in particular, I think they need them to hit instantly this year, because I think that they feel good about, JoJo Phillips and Casper, but those guys to me seem more like, at best maybe a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 right now. I mean, look, last year at this time, we didn't know about Kingston being potentially a wide receiver 1 type guy, maybe a byproduct of also having Chase Roberts to get a lot of attention. But Kingston emerged and became a star. But they don't have a Roberts or a Kingston anywhere close to that in this receiver unit. And it's a big question for this team. Like the talent's intriguing, but just no one's performed consistently to make you feel confident about wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 heading into fall camp in a few weeks.
You already mentioned 2 or 3 newcomers, a couple of freshmen, and then a transfer. How about some other new faces?
I think some of the new faces on this team that are going to be interesting. Paki Finau, left tackle for BYU, and he's going to anchor that left tackle spot. And the offensive line is interesting this year because they brought in a bunch of transfers from the transfer portal, and Finau will probably be the most impactful one right away. Some of the other guys, Zach Yamauchi from Stanford, he got injured in spring ball. So he's really never taken many snaps to where you kind of have a point of reference of what he can provide on this O-line. Junior Sia from Utah State was primarily an offensive tackle with the Aggies. He's going to play right guard for BYU, but he's expected to be probably a second teamer in behind Sonny Mocassini, a returning veteran. And then, BYU's got Paki Finau, who primarily played guard at Washington. He's always been an interior offensive lineman. So he's kicking out to left tackle, and they like him there. But I think going back to the freshman piece with some of the wide receivers, there's intriguing young offensive linemen that in a perfect world would allow for BYU to kick Paki Finau in at guard and then have some of these freshmen emerge at offensive tackle, say a Bot Molitalo, who was from Lone Peak, a top 100 recruit, once committed to Oregon, or even a Siosia Latu Finau, who was, heavily recruited by Stanford and Cal, committed to BYU in the 2025 cycle. Guys like that are really talented players that they feel could be talented players potentially. Maybe they emerge as like tackles, but Bot Molitalo is one that I'll be intrigued to see how he continues to develop in fall camp. But Finau is going to be the one that's probably the most impactful newcomer, protecting that blind side for Bear Bachmeier. But again, I think as far as his best position out along that offensive line, it's a guard, because that's what he's primarily played his whole career. They like him at left tackle, but it's a new position for him. So there's not many game snaps for him at that spot. And if you want to get the best five possible, which is something that, BYU's staff with A-Rod and TJ Woods have talked about, I think that would be, kind of intriguing to see if that could, kind of materialize where some of those young guys emerge and creates an opportunity for maybe to get that best five, to get them in their true positions along that offensive line.
All that time at the Star in Dallas, what did you learn about any of these other teams? And is there anybody else you came away really impressed with and thinking they could be good? Or did you come away thinking usual suspects, everybody knew what to think coming in, and we all think the same thing walking out?
I think a team that's going to be, really intriguing that, and maybe PK will appreciate this, but I think Arizona State, I wish there would have been a little bit more of an emphatic victory at the quarterback position with Cutter Boley in that quarterback battle. He's a transfer from Kentucky. But I just really trust Kenny Dillingham that Arizona State is becoming a consistent winner now. I think it kind of gets a little bit overlooked of, how, pretty competitive they were despite a lot of injuries, a lot of, different lineups last season. They still put together, I think it was an 8 or 9 win season on the heels of the playoffs. And look, they still underachieved compared to where people expected them. But, I remember years where, you go to the Rose Bowl with Plummer and then you dip to like 5-6 with, Bruce Snyder. And it was always kind of like this erratic up and down type of deal with Arizona State. I feel like they're becoming steady. And I think, BYU's steady. Texas Tech's going to be steady with all their recruiting. And Utah's always going to be in the mix. And I think Utah's schedule sets up really well. So I just really like Arizona State. I love their portal class. A guy like Ashton Stamps, so there's some buzz on him, a cornerback from LSU. He's going to be really good for them. I even put him as a first-team All-Big 12 selection on my ballot. But I just like it. I like ASU. I like Dillingham. I think he's ASU's modern-day Frank Kush, and I think that he's going to be I think he's going to continue to win. I mean, he turned down Michigan. Kalani was a huge story last week with the Penn State stuff. I don't think the Dillingham thing with Michigan was as big of a conversation, but, he turned them down. He stays at ASU, and I think they're built to stay the long haul. So it wouldn't shock me if ASU was in the upper tier. I think another team that I'm kind of intrigued by is UCF. I think UCF, because in the old Pac-12, Alex Grinch was a punchline. But actually that defense last year when Scott Frost hired Alex Grinch, the former USC coordinator, who's now at UCF, they were actually pretty good defensively, especially in their pass defense. And I think they'll be good once again with their secondary. And now they've got a competent quarterback, the JMU transfer, Barnett, and I think they got some good running backs as well. UCF, to me, could be kind of intriguing. Maybe they get in that 7 to 8 range, which would be a huge maybe surprise, I think, compared to where people think they're probably in the bottom 4 spots in the league.
Yeah, I think that Dillingham models himself as not the modern version of Frank Kush, the modern version of Kyle Whittingham. And why I say that is because Kyle seemed to always operate best when he was underlooked or overlooked, I guess the expression would be, a little bit, maybe under-respected. And it seems to me that the Devils are kind of right there now. Phil Steele doesn't even have him in their top 45, 50, and guys that do this and really have a lot of name recognition for what their predictions are. And we'll see how it plays out. The potential is there. It could be 6-6 or maybe 9-3. We'll see somewhere in between. We'll see what happens. But I think he's kind of laying low in the weeds there, like Kyle did for so many years, and then jumps up and bites you. And I know he's talked openly about modeling his program after Kyle, so we'll see what happens. And we know for BYU, their center's Bruce Mitchell, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can he play center on the basketball team too?
Seriously, that would be a welcomed addition just to bring some resolution to this roster. But yeah, I mean, BYU, the search continues, and I kind of got the sense it was going to go this direction this late. When I talked to Kevin Young in May at the spring meetings, he basically put it out there that they will wait till the bitter end to get guys. As late as they need to go, that could stretch in October. Because this market with the centers, I think that they really want to they don't want to just throw money blindly at someone who's just a 7-footer. He's only had two points, 3 rebounds, and because that's what's happened this cycle is that there's been a lot of overpays for guys that have really no production, but they're 7 feet, and programs are overpaying because it would seem that the Final Four schools and all the top level teams, they've got true 7-footers more than ever now. But, obviously with the center position, BYU's missed on some guys. And even Kevin Young's noted that some of the players they've been supposedly linked to, maybe not as accurate as what's been put out there. But Kevin Young, I think they will find someone. They have to. And look, I think the last bucket to turn to will be maybe potentially the players that get an injunction with the 5 and 5. Because there's going to have to be some sort of option because they just don't have the personnel enough to feel like you're going to exceed that 6 seed kind of purgatory that they're in. I mean, BYU is good enough to be a 6 seed next year with the roster they've got. And I think the Big 12 is going to be a little bit weaker next season in basketball, at least just kind of way too early forecast on it. But it still feels like if you're going to make a second weekend run, be a top 16 seed, you've got to have some bigs. And outside of Hadim Boop and Adam Stewart, the TCU walk-on transfer who's played like 4 minutes in 2 years, they don't really have it. So it's concerning. Kevin Young, I think he embraces the possibility of creating a lineup that could be, maybe be able to overcome the shortcomings on the front court right now, but they got to add some bigs. And some of these, pursuit of potential reclassified high school guys show that they know they needed at least one center, at least one. I think they probably need 2, but yeah, I just think this is going to continue to stretch on for quite some time. I mean, we might get September and October, and they're still pursuing one till the very bitter end, because that's what really Kevin Young laid out is what they plan to do. They will wait to the bitter end because he feels like there was no rush to have this roster finalized in the summer, because they had that last year and it kind of fell flat by having the roster all together. So he feels like no rush to get it all finalized right now.
Wait till NBA cutdown day.
That's a great point. Hey, look, watching Summer League, I'm like, maybe there's some guy out there right now that you can bring back to the college ranks. That's how crazy it is these days.
You really think they're a 6 seed without any of the bigs that we assume they're going to add or that we think they need to add? Because that seemed
shooting will be better.
That seemed pretty high end, even allowing for the shooting to be better, as PK says 6 seeds seem pretty high end to me. Not that I know anything any more than anybody else. So maybe I'm just too low. But you think 6?
I think they can because, Rob Wright, they project him to be the best point guard in college basketball. Look, it's got to play out. But as PK said, I think the shooting will be better. I think Colin Chandler is going to be a great fit. I'm really curious to see what Jake Wallin, the Clemson transfer, formerly of Timpview High, Utah as well. He's someone that I think they're going to – he's kind of an interesting guy where the whole player development piece with Kevin Young, what he did with Richie Saunders. I don't expect Wallin to be a Richie Saunders type jump, but – I think that's what gives the optimism for maybe BYU fans and this BYU team that they could be better than expected is because guys like him have been in this Kevin Young program and they have gotten better. Now, there are other examples from last year, case in point, where some of these role guys, they just didn't hit any shots, and it was a mess at season's end outside of AJ and Rob Wright. But I just think that there's going to be there's going to be better chemistry with this team. And I think also, too, there's a lot of guys that they wanted to be at BYU beyond just simply, the paycheck or the spotlight of being around an AJ, being around a Rob Wright. They wanted to be at BYU. And, I think the guys that were retained, even like a Hadim Boop, who could be that starting 5 potentially if we're looking at it right now, they wanted to be at BYU. And Kevin Young really likes Hadim Boop, his aggressiveness on the glass. They even compared him to a Dennis Rodman type player, how he can just absorb rebounds. Kevin Young loves those NBA comps. But I think there's a good maybe camaraderie with this team right now, and I think the shooting will be better. I think the style of play is going to be a lot more up and down, and that half-second decision-making that Kevin Young loves in those offenses, I think it's going to look a lot more like 2 years ago with spreading that ball around and making Rob Wright a focal point of this team. And then Colin Chandler, as KY notes, the flag bearer of the BYU program and being kind of the face of BYU and what it's all about. So I think they got a nice blend on the roster. And I think, again, having guys that again, want to be at BYU, I think that's important too, and kind of bringing that chemistry together and fast-tracking that for this team going forward in the next year. So I still think their schedule, we know with these advanced metrics sometimes that you get into the Big 12, if you win some home games, protect home court, which is always a good place for BYU, they'll probably be sitting in that top 30 range of predictive ratings, have a competitive non-conference schedule, get a few wins. They'll be right there in that 6 to 8 seed territory. But I think on the high end, they could be a 6 seed still again because I just think that this team's going to have better offensive firepower than last season.
All right, there is Mitch Harper. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.